Alright, this is going to be kind of an off-the-cuff recording regarding Firefly Studios' Stronghold series. If you don't know what Stronghold is, it was a really good series of castle management sim games made back in the early 2000s. I enjoyed them as a kid. I loved Stronghold 1, Crusader. Stronghold 2 is a favorite of mine too, even though not a lot of people like it. And shortly after the release of Stronghold 2, there was, I'd say, about 5 years of complete silence from Firefly Studios regarding what the next game would be. In 2011, I believe, we got Stronghold 3, which absolutely sucked fucking ass. It was a terrible game, terrible design, terrible art direction. It was just bad. And I remember around that time the community was kind of confused because Firefly Studios never made that bad of a game before. So, whatever, I mean, we were kind of thinking, like, okay, well, maybe this was just a one-time thing, maybe they just got something wrong with the formula and they'll do better next time. So, fast forward 3 years into the future, Stronghold Crusader 2 gets announced and eventually released. Some people liked it. I thought it was just probably even more of a step down than Stronghold 3. It was just terrible gameplay-wise, design-wise. I didn't really like the art direction. It was just missing so many of the things that made the first 3 Stronghold games very good. And I think a lot of people aren't really sure what made the first 3 games good, and I'm pretty confident Firefly has no fucking clue themselves, but I think I can sort of give an idea and an explanation to why mainly the first 2 Stronghold games hit off so well and why Stronghold 2 was about kind of hit or miss. Now, I'm mainly going to be talking about Stronghold 1, and not really Crusader, because, they're more or less the same game anyways, just one literally is desert-themed. All the same points apply. Now, the biggest part, what I think made the original Stronghold great, was its atmosphere.
It was work, of course, sharpening our minds. Making us strong. But mainly, I remember it as a happy time. Oh yes, and then there were the neighbors.
Everything was really gritty looking, the castles looked like they were lived in, the sound effects and the voice cast were phenomenal.
As your father lay bleeding, he begged me to end his life. It gave me pleasure to watch his anguish, and I will have that pleasure again watching yours. Step into my lair and get ready to meet your maker.
It was just a really beautiful game, and you could really tell that the developers, or at least at the time, the developers really cared about it. They had fun making it. Like, you can see all the little nuancy things they would put in there, like all the little joke dialogues the peasants would make.
God, I love this castle. Don't worry about me, your lordship. I'm working really hard.
The fact you can click on a bear or something, or like a random animal out in the woods, it would have a name, like Bambi or something like that. Just little things like that, I think, really gave the game a lot of character, and it's something I really think is just lacking in the newer games. And kind of going back to what I said about the soundtrack and the sound effects, I mean, the soundtrack's probably one of the best video game soundtracks I've ever heard. I mean, especially for, like, an RTS. Like, each one of those songs is so unique and different from one another, and it just never really gets old to listen to. And it's like you have all these nice little peaceful sounding songs, you know, like when you're just building your castle, watching it grow, making an army. And then, when you go to attack someone, there's that song. And aside from the atmosphere and the art direction and the sound, the gameplay is just fun. It's a lot of fun to build your castle, sieging's fun, fuck, even making just scenery landscapes in the editor is fun. It's such a perfect mix of just a sandbox castle builder game, but just mixed with art, I almost said RPG, RTS elements, and it's just something that never got fully realized in the future games. So then this takes us to the next game in the series, which is Stronghold 2. Now, I originally played Stronghold 2 as a kid, before I played Stronghold 1 or Crusader. For no real particular reason, it was just what I was introduced to, and I later found out that the first two games were a lot better, and Stronghold 2 had a lot of faults, and it was objectively very bad, but I think it was still half a decent game. And what I mean is, half of the original formula that made Stronghold good was still there in Stronghold 2. The only difference is that it was 3D, which is not bad. You can make a good Stronghold game in 3D, and Stronghold 2 kind of half proved that, but the game did have a lot of shortcomings, but it did also have a lot of unique and interesting features that were just kind of abandoned because they weren't ever fully realized. Like, a lot of people hated the crime system, the shit system, the rat system, all the diseases and shit like that. They hated the honor system and having to hold feasts and dances, but I really think that's what the games needed. I think those are really good additions. It was just executed in a very, very bad way. So while you introduce something that's interesting and adds more, to the simulation aspect of Stronghold, like the crime rate, the diseases and stuff like that, you end up having mechanics that sometimes end up being more of a chore rather than kind of immersing you or being fun. I don't know, I've never personally had too much of a big deal with the crime or the disease system. I mean, it's whatever, but I can definitely see why a lot of fans didn't like the change, and I mean, I guess if you were a new player, it'd be kind of overwhelming at first with all the little things you have to micromanage. But I mean, when the systems worked, they were literally just extra buildings and little scenery things that you could put in your castle, and it made it look even more lived in. And speaking of that, Stronghold 2's art direction is very good. I mean, for a 2005 game, yeah, it wasn't the prettiest looking thing, but it definitely isn't bad. I mean, the castles still have the same gritty texture look to them. A lot of the little nuanced things, like I mentioned earlier, are still there. Like, you can still click on peasants, look inside buildings. but it definitely did look unpolished. I feel like 90% of the game's problems probably could have been fixed if it had an extra maybe 6 months to work on it. Because, I mean, honestly, you had a gameplay concept that was still the same Stronghold gameplay that people loved, but with new additions, which, again, weren't objectively terrible in theory. I just don't think they had enough time to really work out the kinks, and it was a very buggy game on release, and even after patches and patches, it's still a very buggy game. But the bottom line is, the game was still fun, and it still kept the core aspect of the game was that you are building a castle. And honestly, sieges were still fun. The combat, I mean, that's never really been a big highlight of the Stronghold games. I mean, it's not a Total War game or anything. The units clip into each other a lot. There's a lot of unbalancing issues and stuff like that, but it's good for what it is, and I think Firefly was really hitting a good balance between realistic gameplay and arcadey gameplay like Crusader. But it didn't really stop the game from having fairly negative reviews, and at the time was definitely labeled as the downfall of Firefly Studios. But it started to look a whole lot better once Stronghold 3 came into the picture. Now, I don't think there's much to be said about Stronghold 3 that hasn't been said over 1,000,000 times already by everybody else in the community. But the game's just fucking terrible. It's bad. Like, I remember as a kid waiting so eagerly for the game to come out because it looked so good in the trailers, and from what Firefly was advertising, that I unfortunately got the game for full price. I had my dad buy it for me at a GameStop, and I did not understand why I was not having fun with it when I got it home. Because, I mean, when you're around the age of... I don't want to give my exact age, but when you're, I'd say, a preteen, I don't think you fully understand what makes certain media good, or doesn't make it good. Because a lot of the times when I would play very terrible games when I was a kid, I would think that I was just playing them wrong, or I just didn't get it, or the game's not actually terrible, I'm just too stupid to understand, or something like that. But it was the same thing with Stronghold 3. I remember playing it, and playing it for a couple days, and I was just wondering why it wasn't fun to me. Why it just wasn't clicking like the first 3 Stronghold games. And, like, even at the time, I just remember it, though looking a lot better than Stronghold 2, it just was so limited, it was buggy. I thought it was really Bush League in the sense that they were literally reusing sound effects from Stronghold 2. Like, 60% of the game is just assets from Stronghold 2. And it's really embarrassing. The only good thing about Stronghold 3 is its soundtrack.
They let him lie for a very long time till the rains from heaven did fall. And little Sir John sprung up his head and so amazed them all. They let him stand till midsummer's day till he looked both pale and wan. Little Sir John's grown a long, long beard and so become a man.
And it is probably worth noting right now that Stronghold's composer, Robert Uvino, I think that's how you pronounce his name, he's made the soundtracks for all the Stronghold games, and they've all been amazing. But sadly, the games end up not being on equal footing with his work, at least not like they used to. So then that takes us to Stronghold Crusader 2. And there's not really much to say about this because people were already kind of expecting the next game after Stronghold 3 to kind of suck anyways. But being a young teenager, I was still very hopeful that Firefly learned their mistake from Stronghold 3 and half from Stronghold 2, and they were gonna make the best Stronghold game ever since Crusader. And oh boy, was I wrong. I was dead fucking wrong. I mean, I'll be honest, when I first saw the trailers for that game, back in 2013, I think they started releasing them, I thought it looked kind of okay. I'm like, okay, this looks good for an alpha or something. Like, this is looking good. It's still on the same engine as Stronghold 3, but I'm sure it'll be decent. And then just as development progressed, it was just still looking like an alpha version of what I thought the game would be, and lo and behold, on release, it was just... it was better than Stronghold 3, definitely, but it was just so far away from the bullseye, I guess. Like, if Firefly's been throwing darts, they're not even throwing at the fucking dartboard anymore, they're just throwing them at each other. Like, the art direction in Stronghold Crusader 2 is so bad. I mean, everything just lacks character, everything has this weird plastic toy look to it, like, kind of like a mobile game. It just looks so clean and perfect, and it's just very, very uninspired and disappointing, I guess. And unfortunately, like Stronghold 3, I actually did buy this one too, because I thought, well, maybe all the gameplay I'm seeing in the trailers, maybe it's not actually as shitty as I thought it was, so I bought it on Steam, fired it up, and I was met with this title screen. And this looks like something that I would have found on, like, the front page of DeviantArt or some shit. Like, it's just bad. Like, I did end up actually playing a bit of the game, but it just still was all the same problems with Stronghold 3. Castle building, even though it was a little better, it wasn't fun. They were still reusing assets from Stronghold 2, and what could have been one of the best combinations of simulation and real-time strategy was just a horrible, derivative-looking, mobile phone-esque pile of garbage. And I really cannot understand how there are actually some people that like this game. Like, I know people have different opinions and everything, and that's fine, people have different tastes, but it's just objectively fucking bad. Like, if you called it something else, like Baby's Sandcastle War or something like that, then sure, like, I guess it's fine, it's its own thing, but it's objectively terrible as a Stronghold series game. So then that kind of takes us into the most recent game that Firefly Studios is developing, Stronghold Warlords, and there isn't much to really say about it because, you know, it's not out yet, but I'm gonna say a few things anyways. Now, Stronghold Warlords is their newest game. It could end up releasing and being a masterpiece, I don't know, but my criticisms of it stand from what is being shown in trailers, what's being shown in official gameplay videos, in discussion videos, things like that. Honestly, I don't think the art direction is terrible, just because it's so different. I mean, it's not really what my preference would be for a new Stronghold game, but I'm glad they're finally trying to do something different. They're making it look gritty again, they're making it look a little more lived in again, there's a little more nuancy things, but overall, I'm not really impressed by it. It's still looking like it's gonna have the exact same issues as Stronghold 2 did, as Stronghold 3 did, and Crusader 2. It just lacks originality, and I think it really just looks like they just don't give a fuck about it anymore. Like, I just don't see any passion in it. I don't see any care to want to fix any of the issues that fans of the series have been asking them to fix since fucking 2005. I mean, I did download the demo of it, and it was okay, I guess. I mean, I don't think it should be a Stronghold series game, but, I mean, what else are you gonna fucking call it, I guess? I mean, the Warlord system they have in it, I mean, that might be interesting and fun, I'm not sure yet, I didn't really enjoy it, but there's still some time before release, so maybe they'll surprise us, but, going into some other details about it, I mean, the soundtrack sounds fine, I mean, it's by the same composer, so of course it's gonna sound amazing. They're actually using new sound effects now that aren't from Stronghold 2, and I think this will be the first Stronghold game since Crusader 2 that I don't think they're charging full price for. Maybe I saw that wrong somewhere, but like I said, there's not really much to say about it yet, but I mean, I'm 99% sure it's just gonna be the same fucking thing as their other newer games that they've released, and it's just kind of disappointing. But this kind of goes into my last topic, about Firefly Studios as a whole, why I think they're kind of missing the mark in the newer games, and why I just don't think they really care. And I'll kind of be discussing a little bit what I personally think should be done with the Stronghold series. But starting off with Firefly Studios as a whole, I mean, I've done some digging around, like, in the credits of the first couple games, and I was wanting to see, okay, what made Stronghold 1 so good? What made Crusader good? What made Stronghold 2 kind of less good? Why was Stronghold 3 fucking terrible? As far as I remember seeing, all of the main people, I guess, like, in leadership, are still there. I know Simon's the only name I can really think of. I think he's the lead designer, and I think he actually founded Firefly Studios. But one thing I definitely noticed is that if you look at the credits kind of shifting from the Stronghold games, it definitely changes a bunch. I shouldn't say a bunch. It changes a little from Stronghold to Crusader. I mean, that happens with any game company. That's just gonna happen. It's the responsibility of the founders and the designers that make sure that the new people they're getting in are able to stand up to the same amount of quality as the past talent and stuff like that. But so there was a small change between Stronghold and Crusader. Wasn't that big of a deal. Crusader was an amazing game, even more praised than the first one. Then we move over onto Stronghold 2, and that's where we first see it change exponentially. Like, half of the original people are still there, but then there's another half of new people. A lot of people left. A lot of designers left. Artists left, and I can't think of really any of the other specific ones, but I think, like, obviously this isn't anything I or anybody can really prove. Only Firefly can come out and say, yes, that is correct. But I really think the loss of talent happened midway during Stronghold 2's development, which sort of explains why it's half a decent game and half just an unpolished mess, kind of like their newer shit. And then, once you look in the credits to, like, Stronghold 3 and Crusader, you notice even less of the original people that were there from the beginning just fucking gone. And as disrespectful as it may sound, I really don't think Simon, being the founder of Firefly Studios, I don't think he was what made Stronghold good to begin with. I think there was a lot of important people that just took their talents elsewhere, and now Firefly Studios as a company just does not know how to replicate it. It's either they don't know or they just don't care, which I'm leaning more that they just don't care to put in the effort towards it because they just don't have passion for what they're making anymore. And I mean, it's kind of obvious to tell, because I mean, they always like to say in their newest YouTube videos and their comments that, oh hey guys, we're listening, but I only really notice that they're only listening to things and fixing things that a lot of people are stating that is wrong with Stronghold Warlords and the trailers and the gameplay videos because they're fucking obvious, like animation errors. So now, like, progressively we're seeing them fix those things closer to release, but the thing is, they've never listened. They've never listened to anything any of their original fan base has been asking of them. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I know a large majority of the old player base just wants a game like the original Stronghold or Crusader and just add on to that. Doesn't really have to necessarily be 2D or 3D, just that same formula. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel, or I should say copy the wheel very poorly, and just make good castle sims again. It's just really mind-boggling how they just refuse to do the thing that would probably save their series, and I just don't understand it. I've heard one of the biggest issues probably regarding to it is that they spent a lot of money on their Stronghold 3 engine, which was an outsourced engine to them, so that I could kind of see. Maybe they're just fucking stuck with it, and I'm surprised they're not bankrupt already. But, this kind of goes into the final topic I want to talk about. So, if Firefly can't seem to make a good Stronghold game, what would be a good Stronghold game? Personally, like I said, I don't think it really matters if a Stronghold game is 3D, 2D. As long as you just take everything Stronghold 1 had and just add onto it in ways that make sense, that are different and unique. And, like, for example, there's a Crusader mod. It's not new, it's been out for a couple years. It's called the unofficial Crusader patch. And what it is, basically, some dude who knows assembly hacked into the game's executable, was basically able to add a lot of features people wanted, like making the attacks of your opponents larger, they build bigger armies, it balances a lot of things that were issues in the original games. It adds different abilities to certain units, like the Apothecary. It can actually heal units now, which I think is cool. There's a lot of them I'm not able to really think of at the moment, but that's really all the game needed, I think. I don't think it really needs to be that different. Because, if you take what the unofficial Crusader patch has already done, but you add more to that, like, say, you have bigger maps. Bigger maps were a thing that people have been asking for since, I think, Crusader. But for some reason, Firefly just doesn't want to do it, or their engines just can't do it. But that would be a feature that really, I think, would enhance the games a lot, because, the original games kind of had a reason for it. They had to run on older computers, so the maps had to be smaller, less memory, stuff like that. But I think the map sizes are holding the games back a lot. Get rid of the population cap, because, computers, especially if it's 2D, if it's a new 2D Stronghold, computers can fucking handle it. That's no problem. But you could add new units, you could add different seasons, you could add different landscapes, like snowy biomes or something like that. You can add different ways of sieging your enemies, you can add weather effects, and you can add advantages and disadvantages of, say, like, a storm happening or rain. Like, maybe you can add more castle life buildings, like things from Stronghold 2, like the courthouse, the kitchen, the traveling fairs, the jousting rings, stuff like that. Stuff that makes building a castle fun, and things that make tearing down castles fun. I don't know, I think it's just, at this point, something that nobody really cares to do, or wants to really take the chance at doing, because I really just can't see Firefly ever making another good Stronghold game again. Which is disappointing, because they hold the rights to the game, and you can probably just put any other indie game studio on the project, and it would probably be a lot better than what they're doing now, and it's just really pathetic and sad. Because, in my opinion, I think people get too used to what established games already are, but they don't really stop to think how good a game like Stronghold could be. All we really know is just what Firefly's been able to do. We don't know what some company with actual talent in a modern age could do with a concept like that. And it's just, like I said, it's just really disappointing, and I don't really have much more to say to it than that, but yeah, see ya.